Okay guys, we're gonna do another of the Q&A videos because I want to make sure that I kind of get to everybody's questions. So today's question comes from Kaylee Cat, and she wants to know a couple of different things. Sorry, Kaylee, I was making a gender assumption there. I shouldn't do that. But they want to know, what's the best way to find out what you're into? And what's the difference between fantasy and something you actually want to do? And there's another question, but we're going to start there. So I think that's a good place to start. So the best way to find out what you're into is a couple of different approaches. I actually have a video that talks about this a little more in depth. I will link it up in the corner. It's probably this corner, not that one. I just always point to the wrong one. Anyways, so one of the ways you can figure out what you're into is just think about what it is you fantasize about. If you fantasize about something, chances are you may want to try it and then figure out if you like it or not. Really, the only way you're going to know for sure is to actually do it and try it. But, you know, there's a lot of ways you can kind of do that. Another way is to look online, look at the kind of stuff, pictures that you think are hot, and then kind of get an idea there. One of my favorite ways, let me get a prop. And by prop, of course, I mean my book. But I like BDSM checklists, and that's something that you're going to find in my new book. And you can also find it if you don't want to buy my book. I get it. It's okay. It won't hurt my feelings that much. But you can find these kind of checklists online. Just Google BDSM checklist. But I have a number of different checklists within the book, and you just go through and you take a look at these activities and say, yeah, I'm into that, or I might like to try it, or whatever. And you can do this just on your own. You don't need to do it with a partner necessarily, but you can kind of help figure out what you're into, because if you don't know what the options are, it's hard to know what you're into. So just looking through BDSM checklists can be good. And if you're unsure about what an activity is, then I would suggest either Googling that activity if you're brave, or you could go on to a website like FetLife, and I know that they have like a BDSM glossary group if you just search through the groups, and they will have like everything defined. And I know Novices and Newbies also has a really good list of definitions. So, you know, that's a good way. Even just going and looking at those lists is a great way. Looking online again, seeing what you think is attractive or hot. Going to parties, talking to other people, seeing what they're doing. You know, you may watch a scene and be like, oh wow, like I never thought that that would be arousing, but it is, or that would, you know, pique my interest, or whatever it is. So that's really the best way. Now, again, you're gonna have to try things, you know, and so it's good to try with somebody who you trust and who has a skill level to do it. So you just want to make sure that you're exploring appropriately. And some things you do need to try more than once to figure it out. I always suggest, like if I'm doing sounding is a great example. Sounding the first time, people get so tense and so freaked out because they think it's going to hurt. For anyone who doesn't know, sounding is inserting a metal rod or a silicone rod or whatever into the urethra. And you can do this on vulvas and penises. Like, everybody has a urethra. We can do it on both. So people get really freaked out about it. Obviously, I think that just by my explanation, a bunch of you are like crossing your legs right now and squirming. So the first time, people don't enjoy it a lot of the times. That's normal. So I always tell people try it a couple of times, because once you kind of get that, oh, it doesn't hurt. Okay. Oh, that just feels weird. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure what to think. And that can be your first experience. Some people love it the first time around. Other people just are kind of like, ah. So I would say, like, unless you absolutely hated the experience, try it again. Because, you know, like, I think that sometimes you need to try it more than once. Other things, you're going to try it once and you're going to be like, I absolutely fucking hated that, every minute of it. No way. So don't do it again. But, you know, you need to figure out what's right for you. As for what's fantasy and what's reality, there's a couple of things, obviously, that is going to, you know, determine that. So we need to think about, like, is it possible, first of all? Because some people have fantasies that are not possible. That's okay. They can still be fun fantasies. You can role play them. You can figure out ways to make them as real as possible. And then you also have to ask, like, is it realistic, right? So if I have a fantasy that involves, you know, like hurting somebody to the point that they die, that is not reasonable. And that sounds extreme, but there are people who fantasize about stuff like this, and they aren't like, you know, crazy or gonna kill people or whatever. They just have some rather extreme fantasies. That's totally fine. It's normal. Like, it's not common, but it's normal. So if you have those kind of fantasies, obviously you can't bring those into reality. You can, however, do some good role playing if you have a partner who is up for it. So that is a way that a lot of people will, you know, be able to get past some of those things. Legality, I wouldn't necessarily say, because, I mean, within reason, right? Because a lot of BDSM is illegal, and I mean, depending on where you live and everything else, but like even in, say, the United States, you can't consent to assault, so even a spanking is illegal, technically. But, so it's really going to depend on your jurisdiction, but obviously there are the things that people find just abhorrent, because a lot of times they are. So you just, you know, they would be immoral. You can't get consent or whatever, so you should not pursue those. And then you need to look at, do I or my partner have the relevant skills to do this? Because there's a lot of things that people will try, but they really don't have the skill to be doing. And so without that skill, the danger level, the risk is much, much higher. And so I would say that that can get into the realm of unrealistic, because the risks will certainly outweigh any benefit that you may get. So it's really going to be personal, but and dependent on the fantasy itself. But I think that most things you can try out, whether it's through role play or through just building experience and knowledge and everything else. I know that when you're brand new, there's like submissive frenzy, and which is where, or dominant frenzy. I mean, it works both ways, where you just want to do all the things right now, but we have to kind of have some self-control and not do that. Now to the other question that Kaylee Cat has: what are the most dangerous sex toys or kinks, and are there any fetishes and kinks that are illegal? So I just talked about illegality. Like I said, I mean, it depends on your jurisdiction. Yeah, a lot of stuff is technically illegal, but we do it anyways, like spanking or like, you know, impact play in general, which would be considered assault. So yes, there's lots of kinks that are illegal, pretty much many of them, I guess. Now, of course, there's sort of the extreme things that I wouldn't necessarily consider kink, like, you know, necrophilia and pedophilia and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, I don't think that that stuff is kink. I think that we validate some really horrific things if we call it kink, because that would put it on the same plane as what consenting adults do. In those situations, people can't consent. You know, children cannot consent. They are not capable of it. So, I mean, those are illegal for a reason. So yeah, I would, you know, just say, if you're worried about like ethics and stuff like that, you know, we need to stick to consenting adults, obviously, and informed consent. I've talked about informed consent before. I'll put some links in the corner for you guys. But also, you know, you need to look and say, what are the chances of getting caught? What would the punishments be? Like, what are the consequences of this thing if you're worried about like just the legal aspect? You know, doing kink in Canada or the United States or Europe is going to be drastically different than trying to do kink in, say, the Middle East, where governments are much more religious and conservative. I have a friend who was trying to, she was working as a pro-dom in, I just drew a total blank. She was in the Middle East, you know, country near Saudi Arabia, lots of oil money. Oh, and I keep wanting to say the name of an American black site instead of the actual city that she was in. I will figure it out. It'll pop into my brain like 2 hours later and whatever. Anyways, but she was in the Middle East and working as a pro-dom, and that was a very risky thing. And so she made a lot of money, because if she got caught like trying to bring a dildo into the country, she could go to jail. So you know, you kind of have to take those kind of things into consideration when you're thinking about illegal. As for dangerous, I think the most dangerous kink is the one that we think we know how to do, but we don't. So and that's a lot of things. That could be something from like bondage, you know, if you look and you see all these people doing bondage and suspension bondage specifically, and you're like, oh, I could totally do that, and then you go and do that, you could really hurt somebody. You can cause nerve damage and all kinds of stuff. So that's really dangerous. It's that hubris that a lot of us have. I do a lot of like needle play, blood play, like sounding medical stuff. And so that can be very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. You can have all kinds of risks, but from disease, from infection, all kinds of stuff there. Sounding, you can damage the urethra to the point that a person won't be able to urinate. Like lots and lots of problems potentially there. But if you have the right training and you know what you're doing, it's safer. Like, I mean, nothing is ever risk-free, but it's a lot safer than if, you don't have these things. There's definitely kinks that even if you have the right training in that are still going to be extremely risky. And breath play is something that comes to mind. And I know that people will argue with me about breath play, and that's fine. You guys do you. You're all adults. You get to make your own choices. For me, after attending, well, I didn't actually attend both funerals because one I was out of the country for, but I've lost two friends. One of them was a very good friend and a play partner to breath play accidents. So I have my opinion there. And that's probably, both of those were in the last like 5 years, maybe like 7 years. Two of them have died within my community, and like I said, one of them was a play partner of mine, so I was very devastated, obviously. And it's just one of those things that, like, there's so many risks and there's so many unknowns in it that, yeah, I don't know, I've lost my train of thought because now I'm thinking about my friend. Yes, so the other side of it is that you will be very hard pressed to find any kind of medical professional that will say, oh yeah, do breath play, it's totally fine, it's safe, whatever. Pretty much every medical professional that I know that is also into kink, because I would only ask ones that are into kink about this, have said absolutely no way, I will not participate, and I wouldn't suggest anybody else participate. A few of them will do it themselves, but that's just because they're like probably overconfident in their ability at CPR. CPR just keeps someone alive until you can actually get hospital care, or paramedic care, right? Like it just keeps things going until you can restart the heart. But like, yeah, like it's so dangerous. And I don't know any medical professionals that would say, yeah, go ahead and do it. So yeah, I guess that might be probably one of the more dangerous ones. I mean, you could die. But again, like, your mileage is going to vary, and everybody gets to do what they want to do. I think they just need to have informed consent and be aware of all of the risks involved. So I know that I get asked about breath play a lot, and I will address it at some point. I just haven't had the energy and the spoons to deal with the backlash that I know I will get, and I'm probably going to get from even saying this much about it. But there was actually a good video that is done from a perspective of harm reduction that I will post a link to. And I want to say that it was Sexplanations that did it, but I will leave a link for you guys. It's by a sexologist. So you can kind of tide yourself over until I actually get around to doing that video, but it probably won't be anytime soon. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna leave it there. On the depressing note of my friends' funerals and deaths, we'll leave it right there. So sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just always get silly when I'm, feeling a little uncomfortable. So anyways, I'm gonna leave it there, and thank you guys very much for watching. Please don't leave me too many hate comments. I just don't want to deal with it. I'll be honest, but leave me your thoughts, because I do care about your thoughts. But please just don't yell at me and be like, it's totally fine, MMA and martial arts and blah, blah, blah. Because I've heard it all before. So, you know, leave me reasoned thoughts, but please don't yell at me because I don't have the energy. Anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it, and I will see you in the next video.